Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast about other podcasts, where every week we listen to a podcast and we discuss that podcast the next week. I'm Kirk.
I'm Zach, and we have a very special guest this week, and his name is Keith from the Pop-Up Filmcast. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Keith.
Hey, gentlemen. How's it going? It's a pleasure.
It's going interesting. Me and Kirk have had quite a hiatus for the recording, but we're super excited to have you on the show with us this week.
Well, this is a bucket list of mine. So
this week on the PDS, we're talking about 1619, a New York Times miniseries about the impact of African Americans on American culture, and we're talking specifically about Episode 3, The Birth of American Music.
Yeah. Okay, so as I'm wanting to do, I listened to more than one episode of this show, and it was so good, and it's really good. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, I've listened to the whole miniseries, I think, at this point now.
How many episodes are there? I didn't even look.
I think there's
just
6.
let them keep going.
Like, there's 5, part 1 and 2. You know what I mean? 5 has 2 parts, but then that's it.
yeah, I think that's what it was.
So yeah, it's a really interesting show that essentially breaks down some of the ways that Black Americans were able to impact culture through adversity. And this episode specifically is about how a lot of times the music we're listening to today was heavily inspired by the music that was created through adversity. So they kind of start off with, there was no American music in the earliest days of our country. It was essentially they would listen to things from Europe or English or traditional operas. Basically, it was all European inspired. And then they really said that the first American music was minstrel shows.
Yeah.
And it's slightly horrifying that it was so like racially based, was the first kind of our breaking out into developing our own music. But it is what it is. And that was essentially the start of trying to start our own brand of music.
Yeah, because they talked about that one guy that was doing stage shows and stuff, and he like met saw somebody singing at like a horse stable or something, an older black man, and they had some really good, it sounded really awesome, and he was the first person to go on stage in blackface, and everyone went crazy for it.
Yeah, they said 20 encores.
I don't know what to say about that.
I think they were just bored in 1850 or whenever that was. They had no options because that's ridiculous.
I mean, it was probably like groundbreaking at the time because, like you said, it was just strictly what they had brought over from Europe, some opera and things like that, and all of a sudden this, the sound that people just weren't used to. So even if you maybe didn't exactly like it 100%, it was a brand new experience and something different that got you thinking about it. Now the way that they got to it, it's not very good way as we look back at it over history, but it was probably just kind of like any new show that comes to like Broadway or out in Vegas or something like that. Like the Blue Man Group or something like that, it was probably something that immediately took off for a while simply for the fact that it was something so radically new.
Something new. Yeah,
it was novel. But then them talking about essentially any major act at the time at least tried their hand at blackface performances.
And I will say, this is probably one of those things that in hindsight is so much worse than, even probably, I don't know, it's so cringeworthy to think of now, but during in the time it was probably, I don't know, just
it's hard to even view it with a lens of like empathy because it's kind of an ugly thing from its inception, from the core of it. But I see what you're saying, where it wasn't something that popular culture didn't generally define it as ugly at the time, clearly, because it was popular culture, and people were just going to see these shows all the time. Every major act was trying it, and you can definitely see similarities on that side of things. Like, okay, here's a stupid example, but T-Pain started using auto-tune. And then every single person was like, I'm going to just do auto-tune. And by the end of it, everybody's like, please stop with the auto-tune. There's too much. And that's basically just to say that when something new happens and it's weird and different, people will try it and see if they can make that something that they can use as well.
Yeah, that's not a weird comparison at all. I mean, it's a very modern comparison to it, except that it's just people got bored of auto-tune as opposed to basically stealing a musical style and then also adding the racial aspects. But like as you're saying, yes, it at that time, the population that was going to see these shows would have thought nothing different of it, would have thought nothing wrong with it. It was just this was I guess common practice then. And Kirk, as you're saying, looking back now, looking at it over history, like this was a horrible, horrible thing to do.
Yeah,
because there was no representation, so there was no one to say, "Hey, what the f are you guys doing?"
Yeah, basically, it was.
They had no representation, so that was just
Eventually, when they got around to the fact that like then you would have actual African American artists that would then have to actually don blackface as well in order to do minstrel shows of their own at a couple places. That was the thing where I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
You can't even write something that absurd. But in the end, this is kind of how the show does it. It starts from a place of, here was the situation. Here was the scene that they were walking into. And then here is how they were able to overcome that and through that thrive. Because that's the thing. If you get kind of that first blush look at this, and even in the first episode, she literally starts off, the host, and the episode we reviewed and the one we're talking about, they bring in like a third person who kind of just tells a story about music. But the host starts the entire series with this story about how her dad, who was only able to work service jobs his whole life and she felt like wasn't appreciated for who he was because of the color of his skin, always flew an American flag in his yard. And she, when she was in high school, started to question that and be like, why are you supporting a country that I feel like doesn't support you? Why are you proud to be an American? And she even said that she didn't feel like American. And this whole miniseries is her journey to understanding why he was proud to be an American and why the struggles of African Americans and then also the triumph through adversity is why she's proud. So every episode kind of starts with a place that's not great, just that's really what it is. It starts in a place where they're going through adversity. It's pretty ugly at the beginning, but then it starts talking about how people have glorious moments coming from that adversity. So in the end, the shows end up being very uplifting because it's people doing amazing things when facing extreme obstacles.
Now, Zach, when you're talking about obstacles and overcoming things, is yacht rock included in that? Because I was really thrown off at the beginning of this episode.
You're not a Loggins and Messina guy?
That's what kind of...
It was not what I was expecting when I started listening to this, and his breaking down of Kenny Loggins and those guys. I was like, where are we going with this?
But like, when you hear it, you're like, dude, I get it.
Oh, yeah. No, and there was... It really is true when because then, he moves from the origins and the minstrel shows to essentially when artists started being actual artists and actual Black Americans were able to represent themselves, and it wasn't like a caricature on stage done by a white person. It was they started being able to find their own voice and starting to develop their own music. And they talk about Motown. They talk about some of the jazz legends that still to this day are just instrumental in not only pop culture, but also in inspiring music from that point on. You talk about Duke Ellington and you talk about Marvin Gaye. There's a lot of these artists that they didn't just succeed. They changed music permanently. And now there are generations of people who were inspired by and emulate these artists. But that all came from in the beginning was minstrel shows.
And not just from what they talk about in the episode. It's an excellent episode to listen to for I guess if you want the soundtrack of it. I mean, there's music basically playing through the entire thing. There's hardly any part where they don't have, like I said, starting with various yacht rock, and then moving all the way through the early minstrel shows on to Motown and on to jazz. It's through the entire episode, and it's very well put together and sounds great.
Yeah, the production quality on this show is
yeah, I mean, it's done by the New York Times, which is nuts. Some of the other episodes that I listened to, they had basically guest hosts from other shows. I think there was people from NPR, there was people from Snap Judgment, and people like that. Mm-hmm. Other producers from other very successful podcasts, and it's a very well produced show. An amazing.
It's only like we said, it's 5-6 episodes long. I'm not going to say jump in on episode 3 because I do think it seems it took me a little bit of like, where are they going with this? So I went back and listened to episode 2 as well because I wanted to get a little bit more of because the main host, she doesn't really talk very much on episode 3 either.
Talk so at all.
Yeah, so I wanted to get a more of a feel for her storytelling and stuff. I think it's episode 2. She talks about actually going to not a family reunion, but like going to see where her father was born, and because he had never really gone there, never really took them there when when they were a child, stuff, and then that turns into talking about the birth of the cotton industry.
Yep.
And I found that was a very that's a very educational episode as well to listen to.
Yeah. Kirk, you said you listened to Bad Blood. That was the medical episode, correct?
Yeah. Which that one made me just mad.
Yeah, it's really ugly.
Because, I mean, there's just so much stupid things in our history that it's just like, why? Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Like, real stupid stuff. And just,
No, I said when I recommended this, like, it's in a way a challenging show to listen to because you have to take a look in the mirror and really look at some of the ugliness of our history. But it's you have two options. You can either look at these things and learn from them, or you can just pretend it didn't happen, and that's
because they were talking about like healthcare and like when what was it, emancipation? Is that the right word I'm thinking of? When all of the slaves were released and they were no longer slaves.
Right.
There was like this whole time period where they didn't have any health care. And there was, I forget how many slaves. It was like a few million. And then there was 100 doctors that were supposed to treat all of them. And it was just like no one was getting treated. And it was just so messed up. But the episode that blew my mind, I mean, of course, it resonated with me a little bit extra. And it was actually a two-parter, and it was about farming in like Louisiana. And I cried.
It's okay. You don't have to. Hesitate.
I cried on that one. I'm not gonna lie, I did, because there was this young black farmer he grew up with his dad, and they farmed together. And he was very successful when he was young and stuff like that. And his dad ended up like passing away after helping him on the farm. That was devastating. But then the farming industry, because a lot of people don't realize it, but you basically, almost every farmer, no matter how big you are, has to get a loan every year to start the year out because you don't get paid until the end of the season. And usually, no matter how much money you make, you don't have enough money to start the next season. So because he was black, they were not giving him. This is like recently, like 2014, 2015.
Oh, so this one it brings it much closer.
Yeah. And they literally were forging no, they weren't forging his signature. They were changing the amounts that he was asking for. And then, so he was getting less money than what he needed to be able to plant his sugarcane. And then every single year, it's this trickle-down effect that I understood because I've farmed before, and it was just like, they ruined his whole life. They took the banks took his house away. They took all of his farms away. He lost everything because of it. They're in the middle of litigation, and this is not a new thing, apparently. I don't know, about 5 years ago, the biggest settlement against the government ever was done because the USDA was not. There was a discrimination lawsuit against the USDA, and the biggest settlement in history was against the U.S. government. And this is recently. The fact that this stuff is still happening, and that's not a strong enough word, is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, and that's I think the benefit of kind of challenging just a glossed over version of history, because there are things that were not right. There were things that we need to move away from, and there's things that we constantly need to be moving away from and inspecting about how we are as a country. You know, because I think that in general the world is getting better, but I think that by constantly keeping an eye on where we were, it helps you better aim where you're going.
Yeah.
And I think the other good thing, I mean, it's only 6 episodes, and we've already covered like 4 different major topics out of 5 of the episodes. So they go down a bunch of different avenues for people. So if you just want to chime in and listen to the music stuff, you can get that. If you want to hear about the influence on farming, there's that there. The influence on the medical industry, you can hear that there. So you've got all these different options out of one quick short show. Yeah. Any one of these, they could have done their own whole series on, probably.
I guarantee they could have, and I wonder if they kind of dig into more topics in the future. I think, if I remember correctly, episode 1 is about politics. It's about representation and fighting for rights and having a voice. And there's a lot of things in that episode that are pretty mind-blowing, but it always comes down to the same thing: people rising through adversity. And so there are parts of it that are challenging, and there's parts of it that it makes you, honestly, it makes you sad. It's not something you want to see happen to anyone, but there are stories of victory throughout each of these episodes, and it's a really great show, honestly. I do think that it's something that's very easy to listen to the whole show, and I definitely gained something from it.
I think the beauty of it is it helps you see how far we've come on each episode, I feel like. But it also kind of a little bit highlights how far we have to go.
Yeah, sure.
Because, I mean, you can't just say, oh, things are better all the time, because, there's a lot of ways that we still need to get better. Like, both in the healthcare one, that one hit me hard. And did the farming one. I'm just like, there's things that are still going on now that's like, dude, this got to stop. This got to stop. Things got to get better.
No, and that's why educating on those issues is a great thing. Because some of this, I had no idea the depth of kind of the wrongness there. Mm-hmm. And so it's educational, and it's painful in a way, but I felt like I was a better person after listening to it, because it made me think about things differently.
Yeah, and I mean, I think empathy is a good thing. It's not always, comfortable, but when you can empathize with somebody, then it helps you to be able to relate to them better in regular life. And hearing a lot of these stories and finding out more context to a lot of these things that maybe we grew up learning a little bit about, but it definitely helps to be able to empathize and understand where people are coming from a lot better.
Absolutely. But in general, I thought it was a great show, and I hope you guys liked it too.
Yeah, I mean, it was not what I was expecting you guys to assign me, but yeah.
Yeah, I get that. We did give you a deeper one than we sometimes do.
Speaking of which, I think it's time for us to go into housekeeping, because we actually haven't put out an episode in 2 weeks, and we knew that we were going to get really busy with work, so we kind of banked a few episodes, and we tried our best to continue putting out product, but unfortunately we got behind. Me and Zach, this will be our first weekend in 2 months where we've had 2 days off, or not like a half a day, and we've been working like 14-hour days every single day for a little while. Just we have an expansion going on at work, and we knew it was a short period of time, but we were going to be here for very long, and so we're sorry if we have a little bit of lag, and also like this episode in particular was supposed to come out during Black History.
I know that was the point. That's why I did it. But what can you do?
Yeah. So
you guys sent me the invite, and I was like, okay, they've already recorded the last one they recommended, I'm sure. So they probably got something new they're gonna have me cover. Okay, yeah. Okay. All right.
Nope, we're really behind, but not anymore.
We're very behind, but we are back. And an amazing announcement. We also knew that this was going to happen at this time of year, so that's why we hedged our bets and we said, look, we're going to put out a Todd's one week and a PDS the next week. Guys, that wasn't where our heart was. It never was, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to continue putting out product. So now that our expansion is over, and we're done, and we're back to a regular work schedule, we're going to be putting out 2 episodes a week like we used to.
Yep, we're back.
So we're back in full force.
We're back for real.
Full reels.
Yeah, we've it has literally been about a month since we recorded, so sorry.
Yeah, if it sounds a little rusty.
It is. That's because it is. No, but we're super excited for the show. We both of us talked multiple times while we were exhausted, and just we longed to go record for the.
We missed you guys. We really did, and also sorry on the socials. I mean, Keith's in a lot of the different groups that we're in, and we talked a lot before this expansion, and then we just all went radio silent.
Yeah,
and we're not retweeting anything. We're not tweeting anything ourselves. So, so sorry for the silence. We are still alive. We are still here. We are not dead from the coronavirus yet. But, yeah, we've got a lot of things in the hopper, a lot of plans. Heck, we have a pretty cool little promo that we want to start doing starting now.
Absolutely. We got a round of Podcast Discovery Show t-shirts, and we were going to try and start selling them. Our original plan was, okay, we get one lot of them, we sell them just at enough so that we can buy another round of shirts by selling them. And instead of doing that, we're like, that sounds stupid, let's just give them to people. And so we're like, here's what we want to do. If you leave our show a rating and review on iTunes,
or really anywhere,
kind of anywhere at this point, honestly.
Okay.
And if you've done it before, so Keith, hey, go leave us a different one. And then right at the end,
switch your email.
Yeah, I don't think you even have to do that. It just does it. You can leave multiple reviews. I think it maybe takes your other one down.
Yeah, I think Kirk is giving us probably 90% of our reviews. He just goes.
Yeah, I have lots of different email addresses.
A different email.
That does not happen. No. But at the end, put your shirt size. Just put an S, an M, XL, large, just whatever you want to put at the end, so that we know, because we only have so many smalls, so many mediums,
we only have one more sleeveless cutoff. So,
oh, that one's mine.
Oh, never mind, that one's gone. Sorry about that. I mean, I guess we can make you one, no matter what size you are.
We got scissors.
Yeah, we can make it happen.
But so if you leave,
you got husky boy sizes.
I think we have a few.
We'll have to check.
We do have to check.
If not, we'll get you a husky boy size on the next one.
But if you leave us a rating and review, put us your shirt size at the end, and hey, your odds are actually really high, because I think we got 30 shirts or something like that.
Something like that. I can't remember if it was 24 something.
Oh yeah, it was a dozen. Yeah, so it's 24 shirts. I got one. Zach got one. Josh got one. So
some are gone.
20 shirts. We have 20 shirts.
You could take his back.
Yeah, we can be hey, give the shirt.
We'll give you the shirt off our backs, guys. It might smell a little weird, but you can have it.
That's only Kirk's. I wash mine. I don't know why that's a thing. But no, yeah, we would love to hear from you about the show. We'd love to give you a new shirt. We'll throw it up on social media, so if you want to check it out before you decide to commit to reviewing us to get a free one. But yeah, we're back, and we're looking forward to it.
And I'm excited to be back on a regular schedule, because maybe it's just because I'm real dumb, but having to figure out...
No, that's it. I don't even know where you're going with it, but that's it.
Dang it. Having to figure out what episode we were actually supposed to release and what notes I was supposed to do was really difficult. It was so much easier when I was like, okay, we only have one episode that we have to put out, so I know what we got to do. Yeah. Anyway, so that brings us to this week's recommendation. This week's recommendation, in light of the fact that Ugly Delicious has a season 2, did you know that David Chang has a podcast?
I did not know that.
And if you don't know what Ugly Delicious is, it's an amazing cooking show by David Chang, who's a chef, and he kind of really likes to, I don't know, think outside the box when it comes to cooking and stuff like that. He's not stuck up with, like it seemed like a lot of the chefs are. But his specific episode is called The David Chang Show. Pretty easy. And the episode that I want to talk about is David Epstein. It was a really good episode. Different Epstein, by the way.
I figured. Well, sounds good. And remember,
I've watched Ugly Delicious, so if they're going to be sitting around talking food, I mean, I prefer to see the visuals with it, but then I won't be as hungry if they're just talking about it.
Yeah, I mean that show is great.
Yeah, me and Zach, we used to go to my house and eat lunch because I live close to where I used to work. Now we work further away, but we used to watch that every day at lunchtime. Because that's the best time to watch it. Because even if you're eating garbage food, if you're watching people eat really nice food, it tastes better. I feel like
fancier immediately.
You're eating Taco Bell.
You just imagine your garbage food is whatever they're eating, and it all works out.
It's like, what was that, pan? The hook. When they're pretending what they're eating.
Use your imagination.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen to that, and next week we'll discuss it. Thank you so much, Keith, for being here on this week's episode of the Podcast Discovery Show.
Awesome having you on here.
No problem. If you want me to come back again, I gladly will.
Amazing. We'll take you up on that. And remember,
there's always more to discover. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We have a few things we'd like to tell you. First, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at the PDS Official or in our Facebook group, the Podcast Discovery Club.
Secondly, leaving a rating or review on iTunes helps tremendously in giving us visibility and also visibility to the podcast that we recommend. You can also check out our Patreon page to get exclusive bloopers, old episode archives, and other exclusive content while supporting the show.
Finally, seriously, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you about what you love about podcasts. And thank you for being a part of all of the things that we do.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network.
You can check out more shows like it at